I think this is the right moment to start. Welcome, everyone, for being here. We are with 470 people, so a little bit more than I usually have in these kind of meetups. We are organizing meetups for a couple of years now, and we have seen meetups like a very small room with only 20 people, with hot beer and cold pizza, etc. This is a complete different story. We have 470 people. It took a lot of preparation, a lot of organization, etc. And I know, because I have the data, you are all here for Werner. And I'm here on stage, so sorry about that. I want to give you a little bit of an insight in what meetups are, how we've grown from 5 years ago to where we are today, and warm you up a little bit to the chat with Werner. We have a hashtag for today, ACDNL 2022. So if you want to make pictures, share pictures, etc., we have a whole evening left to share everything. And it all started in 2015, actually. Because on 17 April 2015, there was a meetup in Amsterdam with Dr. Werner Vogels. At that time, it was still able to organize a meetup with only 80, maybe 90 people, and have him on stage. There was even not a stage there. That happened to be the last large meetup that was being organized by a former meetup group. And after 1 year of silence, I thought, maybe I can step up and start organizing a first meetup. So on November 8, 2017, we organized the first meetup in Amsterdam. It started with about 60 people, and it slowly grew to 80, 90, and eventually a lot of meetups. 40 meetups per year, so that's almost every week. We had a meetup somewhere in the Netherlands. And the biggest meetup was December 13, 2018, the re-event recap we organized together with AWS. And that's where we hosted in the evening 14 meetup-style sessions. So that's also where the name comes from for this evening program, meetup-style sessions. And then there's a little green bubble over here, COVID. March 16, 2020. I remember that date vividly because it's the birthday of my daughter. So we were preparing for her birthday party at the daycare, and daycare called us. She's not allowed to celebrate her party. But we still wanted to organize meetups, events, etc. And that was also the right time to start organizing these AWS community days. So the first one, we actually prepared for a live event like this, but it was impossible. So we did it online, together with Dr. Werner Vogels. The movies are still online, so if you want to watch those videos, check our YouTube page. In 2021, we invited Jeff Barr, also I think a famous person in the AWS community, was also there. And last June, we organized a little bit of a smaller AWS Community Day. And this is actually the date we had in mind for this whole event. But we saw, hey, there's no keynote speaker available, so we keep it a little bit smaller. However, it was still a very, very successful AWS Community Day. And how it all came together, I created some kind of a business model. So I looked at a big customer who has a really nice business model, Amazon. Amazon created this business model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It all starts with the customer experience. If you have a great customer experience, you create traffic. If you have traffic, you get more sellers on your platform. Give more selection to your audience, to your customers, and that leads to, again, customer experience. So the flywheel starts to spin, you have growth, and you can create a lower cost structure and lower the prices, which leads to another customer experience. So I thought, this company has a customer obsession. We also have a customer obsession. We don't call our attendees customers, but the meetup group, the meetup members, are kind of the same. So I thought, let's copy that. So for a great event experience, we get more traffic, we attract more speakers, we give you more selection, like today with more than 70 sessions. That leads to growth, and eventually we can do more stuff. So here I want to thank all the speakers for submitting the call for papers, for getting the selected, and doing their talks. There are a few that had to cancel because of illness or COVID, so there's something coming back. And of all those speakers, I want to highlight a specific session. There's one about diversity and equity. And I find it really important because as a community, we found out that we were organizing all those meetups, but not always were able to find enough female speakers. And from now on, as a community, we decided we only support meetups if there's at least one female speaker. And that's also why I want to highlight this session. So at 7 o'clock, at the other side of this building, visit this session. If it's full, and I hope it's full, there's also a photo booth over there. So take a nice picture of yourself and your friends there. Organizing this event, it cost, of course, a lot of money. So we have to find all those sponsors. And eventually we found all those sponsors. We even have some budget left. We have to do the math and the calculation, etc. But if we have something left, and we probably do, we want to support the C# organization. They help in the diversity and equity in the tech to do things like I mentioned before, getting more females on stage at community days and AWS events. Thanks. Now back to business. If we have this growth, we can find more sponsors. And with more sponsors, we can organize more events, bigger events, and also different activities here. So I want to highlight a few sponsors. First, thanks all sponsors for making this happen. Without you, it wasn't possible. And there are a few I want to highlight. Because these are our diamond sponsors. The first one is New Relic. I was actually listening to a podcast of one of our first speakers of Community Day, Corey Quinn. Probably a lot of you listened to the podcast. And New Relic was in that podcast and telling their story of how it came to be, but also how they changed their license model. And I think that's really interesting for you here, because they have two license models. One is free, and it's actually free for websites like, for example, the Community Day website, the AWS UGNL, or your pet project. It's still a free service. Of course, if you're an enterprise and you bring your data, they have a license model changed to pay for what you use. And that used to be different a few years ago. So I really like that change. And it's worth a booth visit. They are here. They have also really cool swag. And they also still have a session left at 7 o'clock, I think. And I spoke to the speaker who is really nervous, so help her in her great talk. The other sponsor I want to thank today is Trend Micro. Trend Micro is I thought the biggest sponsor, but there are actually some gold sponsors a little bit bigger. But of this list, Trend Micro is the authority on security globally. So it's really cool to have them as one of the sponsors for today. They're also supporting the community for a long time, I think from the beginning. They were actually organizing a lot of meetups and events together with one partner that is not on the list, but also on the list, Oblivion. Oblivion is now part of Xebia. So last year they merged the company into Xebia, so Oblivion is still part of Xebia. Xebia is also a company where I worked myself, so I really enjoyed my time, and I also had a lot of help during the bootstrap of the community, of the meetups. So I still thank them every day for their help back then, and still as Xebia Group and Oblivion, one of the biggest sponsors today. And there's actually another thing I want to announce, because where it all started on November 8, 2017, we will celebrate our anniversary. So 5 years of anniversary at a meetup in Amsterdam at the Xebia office. The last sponsor I want to thank is maybe a little bit uncomfortable, because this is also my family sponsor. I work at Schuberg Philis, and also for one reason. I am kind of a perfectionist. I want to do everything perfect, and that's actually the mission of Schuberg Philis, everything 100%. So I joined Schuberg Philis to be able to do 100% delivery for our customers, and I know a few customers are also here, but also I want to do 100% with my family, and they allow me to do that at home. So I'm also happy that my wife is in the room here, also supporting me. And the last thing, I can give 100% for the community. So then I'm very grateful for that. And those sponsors do not only send us their money. I think a lot of these faces are actually working at sponsors. So they're also submitting their proposals, got selected. There are a few sponsored talks, so that was part of the package. But a lot of speakers were just submitting their papers and got selected because of the quality of their talks. So I'm also really thankful for that. We organize a lot of meetups here in the Netherlands, but there's also an event in Las Vegas in a few weeks. And I'm also happy to announce we are also back with a big meetup over there. Every year at the re-event on Tuesday evening, we organize the Benelux drinks, and this year again. If you are there at the re-event in Las Vegas, mark your calendars and join us for a nice drink. There will be a poster in the area over there where you can scan the QR code or visit beneluxdrinks.com. And this year we also decided to bring Las Vegas back to the Netherlands. So we will also organize a community recap, probably in December or January. We're still looking for a nice date and a nice location. But if you can't make it to Las Vegas, I promise you we will bring Las Vegas back here to the Netherlands, and we'll invite you for that awesome event. Time for my first speaker. I would like to give it up for Angelina Best.
Thank you so much, Martijn.
Your clicker.
The clicker as well. Well, I must say it's great to be here after having so many online events. So it's great to see so many faces here. It's also a bit daunting, I must say, but it's great to be here. It's an amazing venue. So thanks, Martijn, for organizing that and getting this all together. Yeah, so let me click. Yeah, it works. There we go. So next to thanking Martijn, I also really want to thank everyone here for coming and for joining. AWS really appreciates the communities we have all over the world. For me, this one is, of course, the most special, being responsible for the Benelux, the Nordics, and the Baltics for the commercial segment. So this is definitely my favorite community day. But I know that a lot of volunteers spend a lot of time organizing meetups, as Martijn mentioned, and other knowledge-sharing events. And I also understand, Martijn, that some of them are actually awarded with a title. Maybe you can elaborate a bit so you can become an ambassador, a builder, or a hero, right?
Yeah, there are at this point 3 programs. I think it all started with the Heroes program. That was actually something I was really looking forward to become a hero and achieve that. I think 4 or 5 years ago. It was about after we invented the community. But they launched more programs. So the ambassadors is more related to the partner program. So they are really contributing to the partner ecosystem. And the builders are actually more for the community parts, the community builders.
And if I'm not mistaken, we have around 50 of these ambassadors and builders and heroes. So can I maybe get a show of hands? Because I heard from Martijn that there are a lot. Yes, there we go. Martijn is here too. There we go. Great. Well, thank you so much. And I would highly recommend getting connected to the people that did so much, because I think you can learn a lot from them. Good. I also want to thank, no, you're not done yet, Martijn. Keep here, keep here. I also want to thank the core group that organized this specific event. Let me have a peek here. So Maarten Bruntink of Noordcloud. Where are you? There you go. Walter Heck of Gideon. Piet van Dongen, who is not here, right?
No.
Is he family?
No, also not family.
Okay.
And this is actually a fun story, because I was sitting together with my daughter. She's 3 years old. And I was looking on my phone. And she actually asked, who is this? I said, that's Piet van Dongen. And she said, Piet van Dongen, is that family? I said, no, it's not family. Oh, but he's called Piet van Dongen. Is he maybe family of Sinterklaas? 3 years old. Thinks Piet is also a name. So very cute.
Good.
But Piet is not family, and he couldn't be here today. He actually had to cancel because of COVID. So unfortunately, he had to miss this one. But hopefully he is here next year or next AWS Community Day, at least next meetups.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have our very own Martijn van Dongen. Thank you so much for organizing everything. Yes. And we also got support from Lef Marketing. I think it's a bit of a tradition that they also step in for free, right? They do a lot of work. So thanks a lot, Lef Marketing, for all the great organization. Good. Yeah, and you already mentioned that there are more people to thank. So the sponsors you already mentioned, but also customers. And I want to highlight a few specifically, because I think Lego, Polestar cars, but also LeasePlan and Traceable AI, they are doing keynotes as well. So thank you so much for those customer speakers. Great way. Good. Okay. I think now yes. You're almost running away, Martijn. That's okay.
No worries.
I will call you back in a bit, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Martijn. Oh. Martijn started off by saying that everyone is here to see Werner. So I'm very sorry for being in the middle of that, but I will promise that I will not take that long. So, let me start by saying that the future starts now. Gartner did a study, and they say that 15% of the workloads are currently in the cloud. That is tiny, because the opportunity is huge. And I think, especially in the Netherlands, a lot of companies are moving to the cloud, and they have ambitions. So it's really time to work with those customers and innovate. So I'm really happy that you are here with such a large number, because there's a lot to do. Something that is also shown in a research that we did recently with Public First. I think 1,300 companies in the Netherlands were interviewed. And what stood out is that we are doing fairly well when it comes to meeting our digital decade goals. Those goals were set by the European Committee. I see people taking pictures, maybe a bit in the way. But the Netherlands is quite high up there, together with some more Nordic countries. So, although that's good news, I wouldn't say that we should celebrate too soon, because obviously we have high ambitions. There's still a lot to do, which is also shown by the other graph. So when we look at where do we stand, 48% of the Netherlands customers are already doing something in the cloud or moving. But there's still so much to do when it comes to AI, big data, machine learning. And what we also see is that the cloud is actually a foundation that makes that happen. So if the fundament of having your data in the cloud is there, it's much easier for customers to make that move, to really use that data for new business intelligence. And when we would do that, the research also shows that it would unlock 179 billion euros for the Dutch economy. So that's a huge number because it's 23% of our total economy. So there's still so much potential. And all the things that you do together, and I hope you get inspired to do much more, really makes an impact for everything you do and really for the economy in the Netherlands. Yeah, and then Martijn also asked me to elaborate a bit on AWS in the Benelux. So we are here to support you, and we do that from different offices. So we have an office in Amsterdam, in The Hague, in Brussels, and in Luxembourg. We also have edge locations in Amsterdam and Brussels. And last year, during reInvent, Werner announced that we will also have local zones, also in Amsterdam and Brussels. And they are expected to be there next year. So all very good news. Yeah, and let me also say that although we have these offices, don't hesitate to reach out when you have any questions. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My email address is ajbest@amazon.nl. So feel free at any time to reach me via email or reach out to my team, because we are really here to help every single one of you. Another fun thing that I'm quite passionate about is the initiative that we started at the beginning of the year. It's called Cupola XS. Maybe a show of hands if anyone has been there already. Ah, look at that. Good, good. Well, I live in Haarlem, and this is really an iconic building. It's the former prison. It's more than 100 years old. And they decided to turn it into a tech center, especially for SMBs, or MKB, to digitize them. Because, well, in the Netherlands or worldwide, you have many startup centers, but there wasn't some center that really was specifically for MKB. So this is a nice place where you can rent an office space, which is effectively a small cell. So we as AWS also have a small cell where we can work from, but it's more importantly a very nice, vibrant community to work from. And we also do a lot of events and workshops. I think there are a few here in the picture. So we did a viewing party, because part of the prison also has a nice cinema. So we did the summit online in the cinema together with a lot of people and popcorn, which was nice. And we did a Formula One event. But there are many other workshops that we do there, with the goal, of course, is to share knowledge and to upskill people where they need it most. As you probably know, AWS has the ambition to train 29 million people over 200 countries before 2025. So there's a lot of learning that we can still do. And this venue is a really nice place to do that and to share that knowledge. But we have more initiatives. So one is that we offer in the Benelux specifically several free trainings that you can find in the training hub. It's called the Express training, if I'm not mistaken. And what we also have is classroom trainings, which are facilitated by Fastlane, who is also a sponsor of this event. So great to see that. And it's part of a program called Nederland Leert Door. It's a government-supported initiative, but it gives everyone the possibility to learn in a classroom setting. So really great initiatives there. Then, our famous logo slide. So in the Benelux, we serve tens of thousands of customers, and we're, of course, proud of each and every one of them. We serve customers in all sizes, in all industries, as you all know. A couple of the customers that I want to highlight here, because they did a presentation during the Community Day last year, are Aegon, PostNL, Binder, and Wekamp. So great to see those customer stories being put to life in settings like this. And a story that I want to share with you today is around Growy. The reason I picked this story is because sustainability is becoming a more and more important priority for all of the customers. So it's, I see some people nodding, so probably this resonates a lot with you too. And I find this a very inspiring story. It's a small Amsterdam-based company, and they wanted to do something completely different, so they built a vertical farm. Well, it was a bit hard to see how that works, but they actually have greens and herbs and everything on top of each other in a fully automated setting, being supported by robots that are all supported by AWS. So those robots, they have sensors and they have cameras, and they have a lookout on how all the different herbs and vegetables and everything is doing in that container. And if they, for instance, see that one of the vegetables has a green or a yellow leaf, it starts a whole machine learning process by figuring out if I stop a little bit with the watering and I do a little bit more light, what happens then? And they run the whole farm completely by themselves, so there is no human interaction. I think this is really something that we in the Netherlands can be proud of, because this is really trailblazing when it comes to the inventions that we do. So great story. I think we already have a nice video out on this customer, but there's also a reference coming. So yeah, have a look out on that one. Then, more to come. So this morning I actually came from Cupola XS, where we are recording a daily radio show of 2 hours. I'm co-hosting that with Remy Gieling, who is well known in the IT sector. And we're using that time to interview partners, customers, but also experts on different topics. So today was around the SMBs, digitizing, and tomorrow it will be around security. We also have innovation, sustainability, so different topics each day. And you can listen that back, but feel free to tune in. It's a sponsored, or it's a collaboration with the Ondernemer. So yeah, it would be great if you could listen in on those as well. Then, so that one is more for, I must say, the business audience. Another event that might be of your interest is on October 6th, where we have the Innovate session. I think it's more for developers and app development, but definitely something to tune in on as well. So a busy week. And then reInvent. Yeah, I think Martijn already mentioned reInvent, and he announced drinks. So I now assume that every one of you is coming there as well. Can I maybe see some hands on who is coming? Good, good, good. Yeah, it's great. We are expecting around 50,000 people, and we have a very wide range of sessions there. Of course, sessions of our CEO, Adam Selipsky, but also a session from our very own Dr. Werner Vogels, the CTO and VP of Amazon. He will be there as well. It's one of the favorite sessions. I know many of you always tune in on that one. But I think Martijn already spoiled the surprise. But Werner is not only in Las Vegas. He's actually amongst us today. So it's a great honor for me to welcome on stage, on his birthday, I must say, Werner Vogels.
Thank you. So we're not going to do this in Dutch, eh?
No. I promise that we will do it in English, okay. Werner.
By the way, one thing coming back on the numbers that you showed earlier about sort of the opportunities that there still are. This weekend, McKinsey put out a report, I think it's free for everybody to use, about sort of the technology gap between the US and Europe. And it turns out that mostly is driven by the fact that European companies are investing 40% less in R&D than American companies do. So, you know, one of the things that we can definitely do with cloud computing by driving costs down for IT transformation and things like that. But still, I think European companies need to get their head around about the fact that if they want to compete on a global scale, they will need to invest much more in R&D.
Good call out.
Sorry.
Thank you. Definitely, definitely. Well, Werner, again, it's so nice to have you here with us. And I know that you have an amazing, busy schedule and you are asked to do these events on a daily basis. You can do them everywhere in the world. Why are you here today in Amersfoort to be at the Community Day? Why is this important for you?
I have nothing else to do.
Ah.
It's my birthday. It actually is.
It is, it is.
So, nee, dat gaat nou net iets te ver, ja. Ah, bloody hell. Ja, fine.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Okay, where's the beer?
Yeah. Good.
Why am I here? I think building community is one of the most important things that we can do. I think the core of events like this is learning. And learning from each other is, I think, extremely important. That's why we invest so much in programs like the AWS Hero program, the Hero Community program, things like that. Because it doesn't really matter what we say that we do, or how you should use API X, Y, or Z. Of course, it's important, but it's more important to learn from your peers. Yeah, and the people next to you may actually have some experience or views on certain, whether you're using our technology or the way that you architect things or experiences that they had, which is way more important than some executive standing on stage and telling you what the current state of the cloud is.
Okay, good.
So yeah, so I think it is extremely important. By the way, I want to congratulate the people from the AWS user group here in the Netherlands. This is your 5-year anniversary. So thank you for all the hard work that you've done. That's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So Werner, can you take us back a little bit? Because you've been in Amazon for a very long time. So when did you join and what was the company like in those days? And why did you join? What attracted you?
Why did I join?
Yeah.
Well, I still ask myself that. I had a lot more hair in those days. Maybe that's it. No, so I was an academic before I joined Amazon. And so in some sense, this is my real first job. Yeah. And so, so if you're an academic in the US, I was at Cornell University as a researcher, the university allows you to do a lot of work on the side. It's really sort of consulting for big companies and things like that is promoted. I did 2 startups on the side. So, I did a lot of consulting, so to talk to big companies. My research area was very large-scale enterprise-style computing, fault tolerance, things like that. And so at some moment, Amazon asked me to come and give a talk about some of my work. And I think, really? Amazon? I mean, it's a bookshop. How hard can it be? Web server, database. Yeah. One glimpse, it did go. One glimpse in their kitchen, and I was totally blown away. They were operating at a scale that was 5 to 10 years ahead of everybody else. And if you can think about sort of, what are large scalable sites, you think about these big search engines. Search engines need to do only one thing really well. It's index and sell advertisement. At Amazon, we needed to do anything at a scale that was unparalleled. And so whether it's robotics, whether it's high volume transaction processing, serving the website, doing machine learning already in those early days. Remember all the things that Amazon invented, more or less, like recommendations and similarities and all these kind of things were already machine learning 20 years ago. And at scale. Because remember that I don't know how many customers Amazon the retailer has, but let's say it's 100 million. But it's not, it's much more. That means there are 100 million individual homepages. How do you build that? Instead of giving you one homepage that is the same for everyone, you need to create something unique for each and every one of your customers. So that totally blew me away. So when a few days later they called me and said if I wanted to come work for them, I didn't have to think that terribly long. And I don't know, I've had great fun. 18 years now. Wow. So when I joined, he asked me how was the company when I joined. I think we were 15,000 people. Now we're 1.6 million.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a slightly different company from when I joined.
Yes.
Hiring these days is a bit different from in the earlier days. Let's put it like that.
Did our culture change?
Huh?
Did our culture change
No,
throughout
I
those
think we worked really, really, really hard in trying to keep the culture the same. I've tried to continue to instill the culture with these 14 leadership principles and things like that we drive everything by. But I think the past 2-3 years have been really hard. You know, it's hiring means, or interviewing means remote, instilling the Amazon culture into people, getting them familiar with it. If you're not together in the same office, it's pretty hard. Yeah, and I mean, Andy has put the memo out that we can continue to work from home as much as possible. I think we'll continue to do that, but it took us a while to actually really get the hang of that. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so that's, the company is, of course the company is very different. I mean, we're in so much more different areas active, all the way to, you know, having social healthcare initiatives these days where we're investing in, all the way over to, I mean, now that after the big hurricane again, we have an AWS crisis team that specifically anticipates, for example, where big disasters are happening and whether we can provide support to the general community, but definitely also provide support for our customers.
Yes.
And that team actually was also involved in when COVID really hit, in sort of connecting with those customers that actually required suddenly massive scale because everything became digital. Or those customers, think about hospitality, airlines, things like that, that suddenly saw a massive drop in their revenues. And so working with them, you know, proactively to help them. So these are kind of things we do now, definitely 15 years ago when thinking about that. So when I joined Amazon, I joined as a director of systems research, mostly because I think Amazon had no clue what to do with me. They hired an academic, you know, sort of. So, but I turned out to have apparently unique gifts that I didn't know about, and 6 months later I was the CTO.
Wow.
And I think there's many different ways in which you can describe the title of a CTO. I mean, some CTOs are pure infrastructure managers, even just reporting up to the CFO, not even to the CIO. My role as the CTO initially was, you know, to look at very big projects, think about technology. I always think, by the way, there is a difference between a VP of engineering and a CTO. Even in younger businesses, even if you're a startup, a VP of engineering wakes up every morning thinking whether he has the best team, whether his team is in the best position to execute on what they need to do, and shields them from all the other crap that's going on in the company. The CTO thinks about technology. Are we building the right technology? Are we in the right position with these technologies to execute on what we need to do? So I did a year on focus the company on metrics, how to measure, how to collect data, and what to do with that data. You know, if your median website latency is 1.5 seconds, it doesn't mean anything. It means that 50% of your customers are getting a worse experience. You need to know how much worse. So engineering at the 99.9 percentile, for example, became a pattern that we're going to do. How do you do that? How do you engineer for the end of the performance spectrum? And imagine you could add another 9 to it. How much more work do you need to do for that? And then control it and pull it in. See what, does it improve conversion? Is this now additional work that we're doing or additional capacity that we're putting against it, getting us a better business result? So then we did a year on removing all single points of failures, did a year on efficiency, and by that time we were launching AWS. And if you become an IT provider, your role as a CTO changes. Yeah, you become an external-facing technologist. I think Scott Dietzen from BEA in those days, one of those companies. Hey, I worked for I consulted for HP, for BEA, for Sun Microsystems. None of those exist anymore. Not my fault, by the way. I had nothing to do with that. I may have given them the wrong advice, but so you become an external-facing technologist, and what that means is that I spend most of my time, even though it looks like I spend time on stage, in general, I use these opportunities to meet with my customers. So I use this as an anchor event, and then I'll spend the whole week just talking to customers and trying to figure out, across our customers, what are sort of the big challenges they still feel focusing on, even though they don't know whether that is actually happening in other companies as well, but sort of find general patterns and then take them back. Well, on one hand, of course, what are we not doing well? Mm-hmm. We are, after all, this is with 200 plus services, we're messing things up here and there. So understanding that, but also understanding sort of what are bigger patterns that we should put our knowledge against to help solve for our customers. So that particular inbound part became a bigger part of my job.
Yeah. I think that's the best thing, right, about Amazon, on being so customer-centric and really working backwards from those customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can you take us back where the idea came from to start AWS?
So there's two sides to that. On one hand, and I hope you guys are technologists, I hope. Sorry, I shouldn't say you people are technologists, I hope. So I'll tell a bit of a technology story first about Amazon itself. Yeah, so when they built the website for the first time, or for the first years, a basic classic design, static front of stateless front end, massive databases in the back end. And so the whole company prouds itself on being experimental and moving fast. And so one of the metrics you use as sort of effectiveness in the organization is how fast we're innovating. And so what we saw happening was that innovation speed started to drop off, even though we had brilliant ideas. Why was that? It's because with all the stateless front end, all the reliability of the whole website sat in this massive array of databases in the back end. And there was this, what we call the DBA cabal, the group of DBAs responsible for those, who now also were suddenly responsible for the uptime for the website. So they became extremely conservative. Any schema change required sort of many meetings. And so that sort of really drove sort of innovation into the ground, mostly because these databases were a shared resource. So Shell, who was the CTO at that time, and a few others came up with a brilliant idea. So they were going to build a service-oriented architecture. They could carve these pieces off. By the way, nobody built a service-oriented architecture. We now call it a service-oriented architecture. That didn't exist in those days. There were no books or so that you could buy and say, this is how thou shall move from a monolith to a service-oriented architecture. So they just started doing it as we normally do with Amazon. So carve pieces of the monolith, put them in a service, put an API on it, allow them to operate on their own database, and those databases are no longer a shared resource. Yeah, so they carve them up. And actually it worked really well. So we end up with 200-300 of these different services. Turns out we made a mistake. Yeah, because the sort of decomposition that we've done was a data-driven decomposition, meaning that sort of, looking at the data, because the database is the biggest problem, move that there, put all the code that operates on it, put it together, make it into a service. So there's 3 large data sets: customers, items, and products. Items, customers, orders. Still, 3 very large data sets. And so pretty soon, these 3 large services, let's call them the customer master service, is as big as that the monolith was before. And we run into exactly the same problem. Yeah? And why was that a problem? Is because we've done a data-driven decomposition instead of a functional one. If we would have done a functional decomposition, we would have decomposed very differently. Namely, in this customer master service, on one hand sits the login service, basically hit on every page. It also has the shopping cart and checkout mechanisms. Oh no, the code that actually stores your credit cards and things like that, or information about your credit, sits in the same service. The requirements for those are radically different. This is high scale. That one is actually not that hard scale. You only need it when you need to pay, which is not on every operation. So different requirements, but also very different requirements. Security, you need to cut these because you don't want people that actually, so if you want to keep your attack factor small, you have to be much smaller. So we started to decompose that into the functional lines. We basically end up what we now would call microservices. And so, thousands of microservices by then. operating really well, everything's going up, innovation's going up again. And at some moment, it starts to go down again. And why is that? It's because each of those teams now suddenly needed to manage their own databases. And so they all started to scale. And suddenly they were all responsible for replicating over 3 different data centers and things like that. So all of that time start to move again towards managing IT instead of building new products. Well, okay, figure that one out as well. Start building a shared services platform with compute and storage and databases and things like that. We're sort of managing this shared services platform so these teams could focus again on the products. Okay, cool. That is sort of the precursor in terms of technology to what later became AWS. At the same time, around 2000, 2001, we done something that was really popular in those days, which is slap an API on something, on one of your core services, and see what innovation happens. So we put an API on the item store, so all the products, and I think shopping cart and search as well. And suddenly, all these young companies started being built that are really building really nice stuff, like comparison shopping, or complete new interfaces, bookshelves, whatever, wonderful stuff. As soon as one of these companies became popular, they all started to stutter in their execution. And we looked at that and said, oh, why is that happening? Because now suddenly, these companies needed $5 million investment because they needed to buy hardware and need to start hiring IT people. And most of the money would go there. The 5 million would not go to by building a better product. No, the 5 million would go to basically indirect funding of the hardware industry. We looked at that and thought like, oh, wait, but we solved that for ourselves. Yeah, and so by that time we started thinking about sort of, what if we would start taking some of these pieces of the shared services platform that we built for ourselves, and take those ideas, not take the code, take those ideas and start building something for other companies that would like to reach what we would call internet scale. And to be honest, early days we really thought about that would be young businesses, startups, things like that. And we launched S3 in March of 2006, and in the fall we launched EC2. When we launched EC2, a week later, enterprises figured out that that was way too good a deal for them as well. Yeah, and so, no, we actually financial services were some of our earliest EC2 customers, because these traders knew exactly what to do with 5,000 cores at night, or 10,000. Yeah, no, and so 5,000 cores would cost them, let's say, $10. Would they get an edge at market open? Or if they would 10,000 cores, it would be $20. Yeah, and so what would be their effect? In their business. So they knew it exactly. And I think the big growth of AWS at that moment already started. I think 2008, the crisis, all capital disappeared out of the market. And so if you would work in an enterprise or in a bigger company and you wanted to go talk to your CFO and said, you know what, we have this this is downtime, we should be innovating. Can I have $2 million for this project, for the hardware for this project that I'm running? The CFO would look at you and go, no. Yep, go to AWS. And I think sort of that has been a true switching point for many of our customers, many of our enterprise customers, to start thinking about what cloud computing could mean for them. And of course, you know, the past 2 years, we've clearly seen that sort of whatever happens, we can drive enormous scale or help you reduce cost if you're inadvertently targeted.
So when did you realize that this was a big thing? Was that when the enterprises started to adopt it?
No. I think, first of all, this was not a matter of us selling off excess capacity or anything like that. This was always intended as a business by itself. That meant that we needed to make significant capital investment to get this thing off the ground. Yeah. Plus, you know, it's very different from retail. In retail, if you have a great idea, you know, you just do it, you put it in front of customers, and if they don't like it, you take it off, take it away again. You know, that's sort of how you deal with more B2C kind of things. At one moment, this is the nicest one of those things that didn't go well. We had built, what was it, your digital soulmate. This was the person on Amazon that was in terms of purchasing just like you. Yeah? And we would tell you not tell you who it was, but we would tell you what that person had also bought that you didn't buy, with the idea that that might be inspirational. Customers hated it. They hated it from the bottom of their heart that there was somebody else just like them. Yeah? Could we have figured this one out with a focus group and maybe hiring some psychologists? Yeah, probably. It was much easier to just build it, put it in front of customers, and then yank it the moment that it doesn't. AWS is different. As soon as people start building their business on top of your platform or software or whatever you call it, you are responsible for their business. Absolutely. Yeah, that's very different. You can't just think like, oh, you know what, we don't want to do IoT anymore. Let's kill the IoT division. Yeah? No, you can't do that. We don't do that. Let's put it like that.
That was an easy one, Werner.
They just made it so easy for me.
Yes.
The same goes for APIs or forever. Once you build an API, your customers will start building against it. You can't go back a month later and say, we made a mistake, we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah? No, as soon as customers actually have committed to them, they should. Oh, okay, so you asked me, did I know it was going to be big? At Amazon, we have this principle. If you need to make significant capital investment to get this idea off the ground, if it is successful, it needs to have a significant impact on the Amazon balance sheet. Yeah? And so it means like, you know, it may seem coy, but we're not interested in a new $50 million project. Yeah? We're interested in the ones that if you put this much engineering capacity against it, it better pay off. So even if it wouldn't have become big, we would still be in that business. Because that's a commitment you make to your customers when you start building this. Remember, SimpleDB still exists. Yeah? You can't use it. You cannot sign up for it as a new customer. Yeah? But it still exists. And as long as our customers make a point that they will continue to use it because they made the investments in using that technology, we continue to support it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I always like, Werner, how you share all of the things that didn't work well, because I think there's a lot of learning in that as well. And that's actually my next question. So can you maybe share some of the key lessons learned, you as a founder?
How much time do we have?
I don't know, Martijn?
Some lessons learned. Yeah. I think I wrote a blog post when we were 10 years, and I think most of those things that are in there are still relevant. One of the things I think you should realize, if you start building something new, you think that you should realize that probably a year from now you're not running the same code. So when you start it, you should start thinking about sort of how can I build evolvable software? If this software needs to evolve, especially if you're targeting an area which nobody else has done before. You know, you can't follow just a particular pattern on that. Marvin Timer at one moment is a distinguished engineer at Amazon. He at one moment described the evolution of S3 as something that, you know, it started off as a single-engine chest-down plane. Yeah? And then it became a 737, and then it became a flock of 777s, and now it is a massive number of Airbus 380s up in the air. And you're moving your customers from airplane to airplane without them noticing it. And moving over, and performance gets better, reliability gets better, all these kind of things over time, and you're refueling in mid-air. Imagine, you know, so we started off with a particular, for example, in S3, a particular data layout, how we laid out things on disk and things like that. And then after a while, you start to figure out that there is a better way of doing that. So are you going to take the many petabytes of data that you have already stored and move it to a new format? Or should these two formats be able to live together? So building evolvable software that can evolve over time, I think is crucial. And there's a bunch of other things. You probably are going to run your software a lot longer than that you're developing it. So operations should get a lot more attention on day one. You're building knowledge software. I think there's two things you should start off with. How am I going to operate this? How am I going to secure this? Because those two things need to go in on day one. Maybe even before you start building your complete product. Why? Because they are actually way more important than your product. You need to operate this piece of software probably for the coming years to come. And the same goes, you need to actually be ready for a completely changing security world in the coming years, in the years to come. So if you haven't built that in from day one, if you want to, after you build your product, and you want to sprinkle some security features over it, you're probably too late. Yeah, so operations and security, and these days I think sustainability, are things that you should have on forefront of your mind before you start even thinking about, this is the product we want to build. Because these things will come down to haunt you. You know, if you have already architected your application, and then you want to think about, am I making use, I mean, what's my carbon footprint? How can I actually be more effective with reducing my carbon footprint? If you want to do this after the fact, after you have already architected it, you're too late. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a number of these things which you basically should think about up front before that. So, fortunately, of course, we have the well-architected framework, and the well-architected framework these days also has a pillar on sustainability. That's early days. The same as we have this carbon footprint calculator. Yeah. However, that's a retrospective look on what you've used. And you know, until we get real-time data into your hands as customers, you know, that is definitely what we need to be able to make the next jump in this, to help our customers, not only at architectural time, what are the best choices if you think about sustainability, but also, you know, in real time while you're operating it. Yeah, I think it's crucial. I think we have a social obligation as engineers, I think, to look at these topics. Our customers demanded, you demanded from us. Your customers also demanded from you. And so there is this sort of shared responsibility model in sustainability, just like there was a shared responsibility model in security. Now, we are responsible for security of the cloud. You're still responsible for security in the cloud. You need to use the tools that we give you. The same goes for sustainability. We are responsible for making our data centers and infrastructure as sustainable as possible. And we do tons of innovation there. We are the largest purchaser of renewable energy in the world. Yeah. And by 2025, all of AWS will be carbon neutral. However, you still need to do...
Yes.
Well, we will.
Right.
We're really well on the way. Was it 451, this group said that if at this moment you move your workloads from your own data center into the AWS cloud, you immediately reduce your carbon footprint by 80%. Yeah. Why? Because we can do this magic sort of bin packing on cross servers. We can make things so much more efficient. If you talk to a CIO worth his salt and ask him, if he runs his own data center, what's your utilization level? If he says more than 15%, he's lying. No, it seriously is. I mean, you're so overscaled and you're sitting on so much old hardware. Yeah, if you have invested into your current infrastructure and now these much more energy efficient ARM processors are coming out, you can't make use of it. You can't throw away half your data center and go like, hey. You know?
Not true.
In the cloud, however, you know, if you're no longer happy with this particular instance, then you go to the other instance. We now have well over 500 of them, different types, all the way from M1s to FPGAs, from Macs to FPGAs, everything you need. Why did we get there? I forgot. I lost my train of... oh yeah, sustainability. Yeah, so that's shared responsibility model. We give you advice. It's your advice. Your task to look whether you should be using a virtual machine, should you be using containers, or should you be using Lambda or serverless for this? Yeah? Under which conditions is those the best sustainable solution that you can pick? Most of those things are already in the sustainability pillar of the well-architected framework, but we'll continue to, let's say, update that one as we learn ourselves as well. And then there is this other thing, and that is not actually an AWS statement, that's more my own beef, is that we've become addicted to video, high resolution imagery, all these kind of things. Yeah? Do you really want to know, does it make sense whether you do an HD video on your site or a 4K one? You want to know how much more carbon you waste by actually putting out this massive imagery and things like that? So we should become more and more aware of sort of the resources that we are using in support of our business. Yeah, this one big video site, its homepage is 35 megabytes when you sort of look at it. That's ridiculous. Yeah, because in general, when I go there, the only thing I do is search. Yeah, and so I really sort of think that we should start thinking also about sort of the resources that we are using to build our products, whether from a business perspective that makes sense. And I know these days, mostly business is around efficiency. Yeah? Are we as efficient as possible? Do we get most bang for the buck while spending as least money as possible? I think pretty soon sustainability will become part of that as well. Now, fortunately, often sustainability and efficiency go hand in hand, especially in the cloud. If you spend less money, you probably spend less energy.
Yeah.
And so those two things happen to go hand in hand. But I think we need to get this awareness in our head that we as engineers and technologists have a responsibility there to design it in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you shared some great lessons and some advice as well. So thank you so much for that. I love that you also pitched in the sustainability, because this is really important topic for each and every one of us. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you the final question for today. Or do you have more advice to give? Lots. Okay, let me ask the final question. So we have a lot of startups that are just beginning to set up their infrastructure. What would you say, what would you recommend them to start with on AWS?
Read the well-architected framework papers.
As simple as that.
So instead of me rehashing everything that is in the well-architected framework, we need to think about that.
Is there a service that you say?
I think sort of, more and more I'm convinced that fine-grained control over your computer resources is essential. So remember, I'm not going to say that virtual machines will disappear. No, not at all. Probably we've already built lots and lots of software that only will run in virtual machines because they look like a server. And especially customers that are doing lift and shift over from their own data center into the cloud, probably virtual machines are the right thing. But when you think about sort of structuring your applications, you want to have fine-grained control. As I said earlier, when we had made that mistake with sort of these big blobs of code around these databases, and we started doing the functional decomposition, if you need to scale up your login service, and it also means that you have to scale up your credit card management service at the same time because they happen to sit in the same piece of software, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, so think about those components in your system that each have unique scaling, reliability, and security requirements. And so decompose on that. Make that your microservices. And whether you implement those as containers using either ECS or EKS, it doesn't really matter. You already have an ability to do fine-grained scaling there. And really urge everyone to think about, are there certain pieces that I can completely implement as serverless without ever having to manage containers or clusters underneath there and things like that. So really think about that. The other thing is that cloud is no longer something that is centralized. So when we launched AWS, we launched in East Coast of the US. Yeah, and so and it looked like, oh, there's a whole bunch of data centers there, and that's the cloud. AZs, things like that. So, but of course, latency matters. And so we started building more of these regions for reliability reasons, for getting things closer to customers. We now have 27 of these regions. Yeah, and we now have, we're getting this Now we're getting the 16 local zones already in the US, 30 more to come across the world, 12 of those here in Europe. And then we've got wavelength, which is AWS that lives in the access points of 5G providers, such that if you build things for 5G, let's say gaming or some other things that you want to do, very low latency, really exploiting sort of the capabilities of 5G, make use of wavelength. If you still have your own data centers, but you really would like to develop for AWS, but you can't because you need to have low latency connection to that SAP system that still sits on premise. There's outposts. And then we have all the IoT capabilities, such that you can run IoT on self-driving trucks and things like that. And then we have the Snow family. You know, all these devices that if you're in an environment where either connectivity isn't that great, or not at all, and you want to store data and move it to AWS, we give you these devices, and then we just have one in space. Yeah, so we send one of those devices up in space. You don't want to know how much work it is to get a device certified to send it to the International Space Station. But we did. Yeah, now we're running EC2 in the International Space Station on disks. Unfortunately, UPS can't pick up it there, but I'm pretty sure it will come back at some moment. Yeah? So what I mean by that is don't get stuck in the middle of the cloud. Yeah, where I think there's an everywhere cloud now. So start figuring out which of those, where can I best exploit it. If you're using AWS, yeah, we're here. If you target Dutch customers, what can you do with the local zone here that you would like to do? Back it up. Maybe you're running your main app in Frankfurt or in London or in Dublin or in Stockholm or in Paris. And then the local zone will be sort of collaborating with these main regions. So start thinking about what can you do with that? How can you improve the services or that you deliver to your customers? So yeah, lots of startups in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Very happy. I think I'm really, really happy to see that, just like the example you gave, there's quite a few Dutch startups that are tackling really hard problems. So there is a startup that I recently ran into called Buurtdokters. So apparently one of the biggest problems in healthcare at the moment, and this is not just in the Netherlands, is that GPs, huisartsen, are disappearing. Well, no, there's no young doctor wants to become a GP anymore. And all the GPs are getting older and actually don't really like all the workload and would like to step out. But they don't. And so what kind of technology can we build to help GPs to make their life more efficient, to make sure that so that the few GPs that we still have left actually can serve customers? And so this whole sort of healthcare, there's so many things in and around healthcare. There's young startups that are where you can take, if you have spots on your hand or on your body, on your skin, and you maybe think about, so is that growing? You can take, there's this young startup in Brussels, I forgot what their name is, sorry. You can take a photo of it, and then again, after a while, and they will give you advice. They of course, will always tell you, go see a doctor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, so there's lots of companies in and around the Netherlands or the Benelux that are actually tackling really hard problems, not writing spam filters. They're really, really doing hard and good work.
Yes. Yes, I think, well, at least I am very proud of all the innovation that we're driving, but it's great to have you in an event like today and share all your knowledge and all your advice with this group. So thanks a lot, Werner, for being here. I would love to have a round of applause for Werner.
Okay, enough. Fine. Now, I want, as my birthday gift, that Ajax wins from Napoli tomorrow night. No? Can we make that happen?
We will.
Good.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Werner. And I'm welcoming Martijn back on stage.
Thanks.
There you go.
Vergeet je telefoon niet.
Ja.
For the final thing, of this main stage event, I would like to announce the winners of the game day we did earlier. And the winner is... Name. We actually decided to put another round this evening at 7 p.m. You see it on the blanket over there. To give many more of you the opportunity to win this game day. I heard a few of you talking, what is that game day thing? I played a couple of game days, and it is like a virtual game room experience, an escape room. I'm not sure if you ever participated in a game like that, but you, in the security game, for example, have to find some open ports in a security group, or maybe an S3 bucket that is still open. In the game day we do today, it's all around Formula One. So that's, of course, a great topic. It's brand new, so it hasn't been played many times yet. So this is your opportunity to join this game day at 7 p.m. And then we'll announce the winners of today later today. So there will be not a main stage event anymore, but at the end of the day, probably around drinks, we will announce the winners. So please join me in the games. And that's all for now. So have fun today, enjoy the food, enjoy the sessions, and see you later.